All right. Hi, everybody. I'm the Pedantic Skeptic, and I'm here to criticize people's arguments in grammar so that you have the best way of analyzing information and making an informed decision. So, we're going to continue on with Genesis Apologetics. Where do races come from video? This is part two. Um, so, in part one, we did some fact checking and got through part of their video. Again, I'm trying to keep my videos somewhat short just because I'm using the free version of Zoom right now. Eventually, I'm going to switch to Bandicam. I like the interface of Bandicam better, but like Zoom, when you do the free version of Bandicam, you're limited by the length of video, and it's actually not a 45-minute limit, it's a 10-minute limit. Maybe after the holiday season, when I have a little bit more money, I'll pay the 39 whatever dollars for the full version of Bandicam and switch there. Anyhow, let's go back to our Genesis Apologetics video. Let's do it. Share sound. We're ready to roll.
The break between man and his nearest allies will then be wider, for it will intervene between man in a more civilized state, as we may hope. Even then, the Caucasian, and some ape as low as the baboon, instead of as now between the Negro or Australian and the gorilla. Darwin's belief was obvious. If man evolved, then so did the various races, and the Caucasian race was farther along in the evolution.
Okay, first of all, at least I'm being honest, these are Ernst Haeckel illustrations of different groups of people. It has nothing to do with Darwin. And again, even if Darwin held racist ideas, which he probably had some racial bias just because he was around in the 1800s and the culture of the time was to be, yeah. So even if Darwin had some racist ideals or even was racist, it doesn't say anything about his theory of evolution.
Process, thus making them superior to other races. It's beliefs like these that spread into society and led to fiascos like Oda Banga being displayed in the Bronx Zoo with an orangutan to demonstrate a step in the process of human evolution. All right, let's take a look here. Why don't we fact check this now? Okay, let's take a look. Okay, Oda Banga. All right. So let's see. Oda Banga was a Congo pygmy being featured in the 1904 Louisiana Purchase Exposition. Why do I click on human zoos there for a second? See what this is. Human zoos or public displays of people. Okay. Circuses and freak shows. I don't like that term. All right, in the 1870s, exhibitions of exotic populations. All right, it promoted scientific racism. Let's see what scientific racism is. It's a pseudoscientific belief that empirical evidence supports or justifies racism. All right. Yeah, now there's a dog that's joined me. Enough. Thank you for the likes. So, all right, scientific racism, pseudoscientific belief that empirical evidence exists to support or justify racism. So historically, scientific racism received credence throughout the scientific community, but is no longer considered scientific. Okay. So just a couple quick things. We're gonna just, for the sake of this video,
talk about race in the sociological context again. Emmy, I need to speak. Race is not, from a biological perspective, a term that you can apply to humans. But for this video, we'll say, okay, different races of people do have differences, of course. And these are important in some respects because certain races are more susceptible to certain diseases because of genetics, this and that. And we want to remember that. However, it doesn't mean that one group is better than another group. It just means they're different. And, all throughout biology, we see things that are different, but that aren't necessarily better, because better is not a scientific term on its own. There's not really a metric for better. Like when I teach, I always say, like, you can't use words like better. You have to use words like faster, slower, more efficient. And even if you say more efficient, you want to be specific about what kind of efficiency we're looking at. So what I'm getting at here is it's not a secular worldview that's fueling these things that were terrible that happened in the early 1900s. Genesis Apologetics is trying to play this game where they say, okay, look at what Darwinism did. Darwinism made people racist. And because people were racist because of Darwinism, they put, people who they viewed as lesser or different in zoos, and that was inhumane. And they're hoping you're going to agree with that. And I would hope that, yes. I don't think that it was right that people were put in zoos or on display because of differences that they had from other people. It's not right. However, it's not anything related to the truth value of evolutionary theory or Darwinism, as you will. They're just not related. Even if Darwinism is the explicit reason that racism was a problem and caused these terrible things to happen in society, it doesn't mean that evolutionary theory is untrue.
Over 40,000 people a day visited the exhibition for 20 days until sensible people, mostly Christian pastors, brought it to an end. As Darwinism grew more mainstream, the stakes grew higher and higher. Professor Richard Wiechard has published dozens of works on the Darwin-Nazi connection. Wiechard states, Hitler, like many German biologists and anthropologists in the
Hitler was not a biologist. Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, and you really gotta stop licking me. Okay, so this is my dog. Her name is Riley. And this is my major professor's dog. Her name is Emmy. Riley's a golden doodle. Emmy's a labradoodle. You'll probably see them in some of my videos. They're absolute sweethearts. Riley's 5, Emmy's 2. They're very snuggly, as you can tell. Hi, Riley. They're very neurotic as well. Yeah, hi. Emmy, just because Riley is giving me affection doesn't mean that you need to come, like, devour my lips. I mean, come on. Thank you. Back to our video.
Early 20th century embraced Darwin's theory of human evolution.
Darwin's theory was not specific to human evolution. You're being dishonest.
Believed that some human races are more highly evolved than other human races.
All right, here is a fallacy. Highly evolved versus, not being as highly evolved. There's no such thing as more or less evolved or higher evolution or lower evolution. Evolution is basically just the change in allele frequency and thus the change in population composition over successive generations or time. It has nothing to do with how advanced or not advanced something is. We think humans are advanced, which is fine. The problem with being so advanced is we have incredible caloric needs, and it's very easy for something to go horribly wrong and for us to be fucked up and even die. And you have something like a bacteria where it's, couple of a couple of 1,000 base pair DNA strand, and they can replicate every half hour and mutate, several times a day and adapt to their environment a lot more quickly than a human. Yes, how can I help you? You still have rice stuck to your nose, Riley. So there are costs to being advanced.
races. These unequal races are locked in an unavoidable struggle for existence that manifests itself in an economic and social competition, as well as warfare and even racial extermination.
This has nothing to do with evolutionary theory, and it's not to say that evolutionary theory fueled these prejudices, biases, and atrocities. I mean, if you look at the Bible, there are genocides and all sorts of wars and other horrific shit that people do to one another that predate evolution, Darwin's theory, or anything like that. And throughout history, there are a number of instances of humans being unkind to one another and, even viciously genocidal that don't have anything to do with evolutionary theory. They came before evolutionary theory was even thought of.
He thought he was helping humans evolve to higher levels by favoring the superior races and eliminating the inferior ones.
That's not exactly how evolution works, anyways.
Hitler based his policy of expansionist warfare on the idea of a Darwinian biologist turned geographer, Friedrich Ratzel, who argued that the struggle for existence was essentially a struggle for living space to.
In evolution, whether or not you're successful has to do with whether or not you produce offspring. At the very worst, evolution could guide eugenics, where you're sterilizing people who you deem unfit. And I personally don't agree with that idea. I think we need to be responsible with our reproduction, and I think that, we need to educate people in ways that discourage them from having children, but I don't think we need to forcibly sterilize people. Now, let me take a look at who Friedrich Ratzel was. German geographer, let's see. Okay. German geographer and ethnographer. What's an ethnographer? Study of anthropology and systematic study of individual cultures. Okay. Let's see. Ratzel's father was head of household staff of the Grand Duke of Baden. He attended high school in Karlsruhe for 6 years before being apprenticed to apothecaries. Okay. Went to Wapperswell and yeah, okay. He studied the classics. Okay. He began a period of travels. He was a zoologist until he became a geographer. He produced the foundations of human geography. What's human geography? Deals with humans and their communities, cultures, and interactions with the environment. Okay, that's not racist. Let's see. His work was misinterpreted. Okay, so his work was misinterpreted and created environmental determinists, the study of how the physical environment predisposes societies towards particular developmental trajectories. I mean, environmental determinism doesn't sound like something horribly out of left field. You would expect the environment to determine how a group adapts. I mean, that's the cornerstone of natural selection. But natural selection is not the only mechanism for which evolution occurs, by the way. Let's see. Writings influenced by many thinkers, including Darwin and Ernst Haeckel. He published papers. There's nothing like horribly like racist screaming to me from this read about his biography. I mean, if he had racist ideas or held to racist beliefs, it wouldn't surprise me, partially because he was a European who lived in the 1800s to early 1900s. But again, it's doing nothing to A, disprove evolutionary theory, and B, prove creationism.
To enable the superior race to expand in. The Nazi Party started laying the foundation for the actions of Hitler's future army by showing films like this one in every theater in Germany.
Alles Lebensschwache geht in der Natur unfehlbar zugrunde. Wir Menschen haben gegen dieses Gesetz der natürlichen Auslese in den letzten Jahrzehnten furchtbar.
This isn't completely true. Even today, there are still plenty of genetic mutations and diseases that we get that we can't do anything about that invariably cause natural selection to still occur. I mean, yeah, we don't die of shit like cholera, diarrhea, broken bones anymore because we have better medical technology, but we still can't cure like Parkinson's and Huntington's disease and things, even things that kill you before you're able to reproduce, like Tay-Sachs, which is a disease that people who are ethnically Jewish are more predisposed to. That doesn't mean that people who are Jewish are lesser. It just means that people who are Jewish are more likely to have the gene that causes a particular disease called Tay-Sachs, which actually, let me, just for this purpose of being accurate here, Tay-Sachs disease. Okay. It's a genetic disorder that results in the destruction of nerve cells in the central nervous system. It's infantile Tay-Sachs. A rare inherited disorder, so it's inherited. It's typically found in people with certain ancestry, such as Eastern European Jews. Again, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with Jewish people. It just means that Jewish people are more likely to carry the genes in their genome that causes this disease. It cannot be cured, can be lifelong, research is ongoing, and you normally die when you're like 4 from this disease. Late onset Tay-Sachs. I mean, there are a number of diseases that kill people still. It doesn't mean that any racist ideas are correct, and it doesn't mean that there are groups of humans that are superior or inferior to one another. But just because somebody can take that idea and draw a racist conclusion doesn't mean that the disease doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that evolutionary theory is false.
Gesündigt. Wir haben unwertes Leben nicht nur erhalten, wir haben ihm auch Vermehrung gewährt. Die Nachkommen dieser Krankheit.
How are we encouraging people's propagation? I mean, like, we encourage propagation today by like giving people tax breaks for having kids and shit like that. But I don't think it's accurate to say we are encouraging people who are carrying rare disorders to breed at a higher rate than anybody else in the population. Today we have genetic counseling where, somebody can say, hey, you two are thinking of having a baby, but you're carrying genes for something terrible. You might want to think twice before you have a kid, or we can help with a number of different procedures to reduce the chances that your baby will inherit this terrible disease. I'm just, the video that's being featured in this video is not coming from sound science in the first place. The problem here is this is one alarmist from Germany in the 1800s who is coming up with an idea that isn't necessarily backed by science. And even if it's backed by the science of the time, science is constantly progressing and changing. It doesn't mean that this idea is any longer valid, because there are probably better ideas that have replaced it since the 1800s.
Sahen so aus. Gesunde Menschen wohnten in engen, lichtlosen Gassen.
This is just an alarmist propaganda video. It's not. The problem is Genesis Apologetics wants you to associate this with evolutionary theory and wants you to think that everybody who supports evolutionary theory has this idea in the back of their head. And the problem is it still doesn't have anything to do with the truth value of evolutionary theory. Even if everybody who accepts evolution thinks this way and agrees with the content of this alarmist video, it doesn't mean that evolution is not true.
Und halb verfallenen Lauben. Idioten und Schwachsinnigen baute man aber Paläste. Und diese kranken Menschen waren gar nicht empfänglich für die Schönheit, mit der man sie umgab. Das deutsche Volk kennt das ganze Ausmaß dieses Elends wohl kaum. Es kennt nicht den drückenden Geist jener Häuser.
I mean, I'm still not getting the point here. I don't know where this is going. I could make the argument that the healthier people don't need to be as protected from the environment as the sick people. And you can have, it's like the idea where if you're able to walk perfectly, you don't need to be, owning a wheelchair or something like that. Where if you have groups of people who are sick, you might want to protect them from the environment a little bit more. I'm not advocating like boy in the bubble type shit, but if somebody is able to handle living in a little bit of a dirtier place for the time being, and you have somebody who gets sick living in that dirty place, it only makes sense to put the person who's sick in a little bit more of a protective spot so that they have, as good of an opportunity to survive. It's kind of like the same concept. When I do my moth rearing, I have some species that eat a whole wide range of things and some species that only eat a couple of things. Like if I have a species that eats oak, sassafras, maple, hickory, and a couple other things, and then one species that will only eat sassafras, the species that only eats sassafras is going to get the sassafras before the species that can also eat oak and maple and hickory. That's just equity.
In denen Tausende lallende Schwachsinnige künstlich ernährt und gepflegt werden müssen, die tiefer stehen als jedes Tier.
Okay, so Darwinists, which isn't really a thing, but people who accept evolution aren't all saying that somebody who has a condition where they can't feed properly are lower. It just means they have a condition where they can't feed properly.
In den letzten 70 Jahren hat sich unser Volk um 50% vermehrt, während die Zahl der Erbkranken im gleichen Zeitraum.
I'd like to fact check this. Yeah, I don't know what video are the hereditarily ill. Yeah, my guess is that that figure is made up. There's really, I don't see where this person is getting that idea from. I mean, if you really think about it, being hereditarily ill would slow your reproductive rate more than anything.
Um 450% gestiegen ist. Wenn diese Entwicklung so weiterliefe, würde schon in 50 Jahren auf 4 gesunde Menschen.
Again, people who accept evolutionary theory don't necessarily refer to somebody who was ill in any way as a defective. Health is a relative term, and I don't believe in the idea of a completely 100% perfectly healthy person. I mean, we all have things that are imperfect about ourselves. I'm not seeing where this is going in terms of furthering the idea that evolutionary theory promotes racism or eugenic ideas or anything like that.
Ein Erbkranker kommen, ein endloser Zug des Grauens würde in die Nation hineinmarschieren, maßloses Elend über ein wertvolles Volk kommen, das dann mit Riesenschritten seinem Ende entgeginge.
This clearly shows how Darwin's ideas were used to persuade an army to do incredibly barbaric things to...
I mean, the Nazis were mostly going after the Jews. They also went after homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, people who are disabled. Like, some of this doesn't have anything to do with your health status in the first place.
Certain people groups. The effects of Darwinism weren't limited to just Europe and the...
This isn't tying this to Darwinism. First of all, this is Mendelian genetics here, not Darwinism. And secondly, this still has nothing to do with the true value of evolutionary theory.
The Second World War. Charles Darwin visited Australia in 1836 and noted that the Aboriginal population was in decline. He believed that as the stronger British thrived, it was likely that Aboriginal peoples in Australia would soon be completely wiped out.
Okay, Darwinism has to do, well, evolution has to do with changes in allele frequency over time. What we're seeing here is something called gene flow, where you have the British who come in and who are actively suppressing the livelihoods of these Aboriginal people, because we know that British colonialism did a lot of brutal, cruel things. And I'm not saying it was right or anything, but it's history. It's what happened. It doesn't have anything to do with the fitness or health status of the Aboriginal people, or B, whether or not the Aboriginal people were deserving of what happened or what their rights should be. All right, so we're gonna stop the video here. So we're about halfway through Genesis Apologetics video now. So we will pick up in the next video with more of their video. So I've been Alex. I've been pedantic, aromantic, and adjacent to the Atlantic. Thank you for watching.